I am so excited this evening for me, this morning for you, to welcome Raven and Cherise from the Dayton Mediation Center to talk about an initiative that is really different and novel, and I think it's got so much potential. Called the Mediation Response Unit. And I first found out about it because I saw a post, I think, Cherise, that you made on LinkedIn with you standing with your mediator jacket in front of a car that said Mediation Response Unit. And I thought, what is this? What is all this about? So I did a little bit of detective work, but I'm really interested to hear a little bit about it from both of you. So I wanted to start off with if you guys would like to introduce yourselves in whatever way you're comfortable with, but also to talk a little bit about how this mediation response unit started, because I think that in itself is a really interesting story.
Awesome. Well, I'll jump in. My name is Cherise Hairston, and this next month will be my 24th year at the Dayton Mediation Center, and we're a community mediation center located in the United States in Dayton, Ohio, and Dayton, Ohio is in the southern part of Ohio, and we've had a community mediation center since 1987. So we've got some longevity along with many other programs. And I actually came to this work. I was looking for purpose and calling. I realize now, what am I supposed to do with my life when I grow up? And I always loved helping people. And I was interested in doing a graduate degree, but I wasn't sure what that looked like to combine my love of people and human rights and civil rights and social justice. And so a local college had a master's in conflict resolution. And what I like to say is I did a deep dive into mediation, and here I am 27 years later, being in this field. And I purposely, once I learned about mediation and community mediation, that kind of grassroots effort to give people in the community a voice around their local issues and their neighborhood issues. And was lucky enough that we had a community mediation center here in Dayton where I could do my practicum and learn all about it and meet volunteers and be trained. And so really who we are as an entity is a community mediation center, and we use volunteers and a small staff of trained professional mediators and conflict resolution specialists. And we use our volunteers, and we have an advisory board that helps us really intervene in pre-pandemic. We were intervening in more than 1,000 conflict situations annually, and of those 1,000, roughly we did about 800 mediations. So quite busy community mediation center, and we get a mix of referrals from the police. Already we'd had long partnership with the police, long partnership with the juvenile court system. We're part of City of Dayton local government, so we had partnerships within the city to help citizens, community members access community resources. So that's a little bit about the Community Mediation Center that is the Dayton Mediation Center, a little bit about me.
Thanks, Cherise. And I hear a couple of words there that really strike a chord with me, that you guys, and the MRU in particular, put the community into community mediation. And you mentioned grassroots, and I think it's a perfect example of grassroots in action, even beyond the centre walls. Raven, you've not been there quite as long, I think, as Cherise, but tell us about how you became involved.
Yeah, so listen, Cherise, A plus, number one right there. She's got all the knowledge and she's able to help us put that into practice. So that's been great to have her as a colleague and a mentor. So, I've only been with the city of Dayton for about a little over a year and a half, and I was actually brought in for the MRU. Prior to that, I have experience. I was the director of victim services. So working with victims of crime and in particular with victims of sexual violence and human trafficking. So I have a pretty extensive background in that work, in addition to advocacy for children and just all kinds of different things. I also have history in law enforcement and juvenile probation and children's services. So this was a great way to take my social work life and my law enforcement life and bring them together to create something that is law enforcement friendly, but also social work friendly. So you combine those two and come with the MRU. So I haven't had quite the years under my belt at the Mediation Center, but I'm telling you, in the year and a half, I feel like I've been here forever. So learning the different things that have been going on and how we are literally taking the work that our center has been doing for decades, and now we're meeting people where they are in the community, and that's amazing to see.
And not just metaphorically, physically meeting people where they are, which I think is
Correct.
lovely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
Literally. And I think that's what's exciting for me as a long timer here, or elder. I kind of like to think of myself as an elder at this point. We certainly, prior to the MRU coming on board and with under Raven's wonderful direction, but we certainly were able to go out into the community and talk with people, and we certainly did mediations in locations that were convenient to people. Often people had transportation issues, or they just didn't feel safe coming into the downtown Dayton area to come to our center. And we've been in various locations. So we were able to do that with less immediacy, I would have to say. There's a call into the office, and then maybe we can come out tomorrow, right? Or the next day to talk with people. But with the mediation response unit, and Raven will get into this, it is immediate and it is right there. People are calling for help with their situation. It's right immediate. So it's just this wonderful blend that Raven is really helping us innovate what we do, and it's exciting for me.
yeah. And it's a really interesting that you're not just meeting people where they are, you're meeting them when they are, like right in the heat of the moment, which for a lot of kind of, I guess, standard practice mediators, if there is such a thing, that would be pretty scary. Like, these parties aren't prepared. I'm going into a space that I don't control. For a lot of mediators, that would feel really uncomfortable. So I imagine that was something to get used to.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Raven, tell us a little bit about how it got started. You said that you have a background in law enforcement and juvenile justice and those sorts of things. So I guess that helped that you had some experience. But mediation and law enforcement doesn't always naturally go together, apart from perhaps in a restorative justice kind of sense in a court setting. But you guys have taken that much more broadly than that context, haven't you?
Absolutely. So when we talk, I guess the important piece for here is defining what mediation is, because mediation looks different for different people. And what we like to present it as, and we don't always use the word mediation, sometimes we use the word conversation, but when we talk about it in a manner of which we provide safe space for people to have conversations that they may not otherwise have. And that's really what mediation is. It's a safe space for people to be heard, to hear and be heard, and move from that weakness and being self-absorbed to the place of empowerment and recognition. So that's an important piece of that transformative mediation. And that's important to define that to understand about the Mediation Response Unit. So in the United States, we've had some challenges for we have a history of challenges that a lot of times is based on different intersectionalities, such as race or sex or gender or economic status or all of the isms that you could possibly think of. So all of those intersect into this. And after in 2020, there was a very huge case in the media and the news in which a young man was killed by police. And after that, before that, there were some talks, but after that, the talks seemed to be getting a little bit more involved and things like that. And our city decided, hey, we're going to put some action and some money behind this police reform initiative, and we're going to make stuff happen. So they developed some working groups. They involved all types of people from our community, from someone who may have just moved here recently, someone who's been here for years, someone that's working in a certain profession, to someone that's like a general labor. So all kinds of very diverse groups. And with these diverse groups, they handed down 142 recommendations for change with our local police department. Some of those, while they were all important, some of those were kind of smaller policy changes. Some of them were about use of force, body cams, and different things like that. And then out of that, they also recommended for a couple of different programs to be started. And they wanted to expand their telephone response unit so that more people could call in and do reports over the phone that don't necessarily need an officer in person. In addition, they wanted a team to specifically respond to behavioral and mental health crises. And then they wanted another team, the MRU, to handle low emergent 911 and police calls. So anything that involves people in conflict, but not weapons. Here in the US, our police typically are armed with various levels of the ability to use different uses of force, whether it would be verbal or hands, restraint. Sometimes they have tasers, batons, guns. They have different things that they can utilize. And really, if you think about it, the MRU and what we're doing is another tool in the tool belt. So that's how we developed. That's how we came about. And it's been great to see this develop and really take off.
And so is it correct to say that in some ways you took up some of the calls that police would go out to, and it would kind of be not a waste of their time, but they had different skills. They were there for the more high-end, as you said, people with weapons, and a lot of what they were going out for were things that didn't particularly need a police officer, and that's sort of the space where you guys have gone in with a different skill set to support people to manage conflict that's not at that high end with a weapon. Is that a fair description? Absolutely. Or have I missed it?
No, that was a pretty fair description. We are handling the calls that either A, don't have a criminality piece, B, an armed response would not be appropriate, and C, we are able to assist and connect people to resources in our community that they may not have otherwise. Because our policing in the United States have changed across, over the past few decades. We've gone from very enforcement type of police to community policing, back to enforcement, back to community, and then now it's a mixture of those things. So the continuum of law enforcement has been a wave over in my experience, the last 25 to 30 years. So it's interesting to see more changes come about and the support that comes from both the law enforcement community and our community members themselves. To see the support, there were lots of questions in the beginning. Oh, you're going to go unarmed. How's that going to be possible? You're going to get hurt. You're going to get killed, things like that. And when people would say those types of things, I would encourage them to look at things from a different perspective, because here we have social workers, children's services, probation, parole, housing authorities, health workers that already are in the community, unarmed, responding and doing things in our community. So having us is not something that's totally foreign. It's different from what we've been doing. And different and change is always difficult. But once you make the changes and you implement and you see the benefits, that argument dissipates.
Yeah. And you're not just sending the newest intern in without any training or skills, are you? It's not as though you just get someone off the street and say, you can be our next mediation response person, off you go, and hope that they can facilitate a conversation in a supportive way.
Right, right. Yep, that doesn't.
Right.
Cherise.
Cherise,
Well,
you gonna say
well, and
something?
our community really wanted. Our community is probably no different than many other communities across the United States, where there's this recognition that um, the the police coming out may not be the best resource for us to help the situation, and for what we say in the lingo, black and brown communities, so communities of African Americans and people of Asian, um, Latin descent. I mean, just the spectrum of what we say are black and brown peoples, disproportionately are harmed with the police interaction, and the statistics. And so our community, really wanted something different. And I think this idea of having a response that's going to be helpful to their situation has been received, along with I think those questions about our safety are ones of concern, um, that are real. But I think the community really wanted something different that could really help them, and that's really what the MRU program has been doing. And to the point of who can do this work, from a community mediation perspective, our volunteers go through a 9-month apprenticeship process to learn transformative mediation. And that's, about 60 hours of training spread out over, a 9-month period. And so it does take time, but our MRU, and Raven can speak to this, have come with highly specialized skills in a variety of disciplines, including social work. And so they bring that level of expertise. So I would say that we don't have volunteers out in the streets, because the role is a unique role that brings specialized training with it. And Raven can talk about all that, but that's one piece that's really important to go to your question, Sam.
Hmm.
It's
Perhaps you
also
could.
important.
Sorry, go,
Oh,
Raven.
I was just going to say it's also important to know that, and when our program was developed, we had a couple of goals. Number one was to improve positive police community relations. A lot of times, the only contact that people have with police are when something's wrong. So we need to be able to make different contacts with police in different manners, like games, out in the street, playing basketball, talking to people, cruising through neighborhoods, rolling windows down, talking to people, things like that. So that was one of the goals. And in order to do that, we would provide an alternative to police response for those lower emergent calls of conflict and crises. In addition, that would another piece of that goal is to reduce the overall number of 911 and police calls that are made that are not, most likely are not appropriate for police response. In particular, we wanted to offer alternatives to our marginalized communities, and specifically to our Black, Brown, and immigrant communities. So those are the overall goals of the MRU.
I've got so many questions based on what you're saying, but perhaps for people who aren't familiar with the Mediation Response Unit and how it works, perhaps you could give a little bit of an overview of how it works in practice, how you get involved, what you do when you go out there, what sort of things you're called to support.
Sure. So currently, the United States operates on a 911 system. That is a system that anywhere you are, if there's an emergency, no matter where you're at, you can call 911, and based on where you're at, you can get the assistance that you need, whether it's a medical emergency, there's a crime in progress, or what happened. So having that knowledge is important, because sometimes other countries don't have that. So knowing our system. So 911 is the go-to. When you don't know who to call and you are in crises and having a moment, whether that someone stole your toothbrush or someone shot out your back window, it's still a crisis to you, and it's important for you to be able to reach out to. And when people don't know who to call, they call police. So I think that's an important piece of that. So knowing that this can operate, calls can come in a couple of different ways. So if someone were to call 911 or the police non-emergency number, they're going to get a dispatcher. The dispatcher is going to talk with them, and if the dispatcher recognizes, oh, this would be a great fit for MRU, they can do one of three things actually. One, they can connect the caller to my call taker right away. My call taker will try to work through some of the things that are going on. If over the phone isn't working, then they're going to send a 2-person response team to the location of where the person is. That's one option. Option 2, dispatch can call MRU over the radio system because we operate on the same computer and radio system as our police and fire. They can call over the radio system, hey MRU, can you take the neighbor dispute on Catalpa Drive? Okay. The third is that they will put it in the queue. So like a list of all the calls for service that come in, they can put it on the computer, and then my teams that are out in the streets can select that call and self-dispatch to that call and assist with whatever challenge is happening. That calls can come in is people can call our line directly. So if they don't feel comfortable with calling police or something is going on, they can actually call our hotline directly and speak to one of our call takers and kind of work through that situation. Other ways that calls can come in, if an officer is on scene at something and is thinking, oh, like this isn't appropriate for me, or I have a different call to go on, this would be more appropriate, they can call us over the radio and ask us to respond. Sometimes they might, for like domestic disputes, the threat may be eliminated, as in like the person's arrested or asked to leave or something, and then they may call us in to assist the victim with getting connected to resources because they're not always willing to talk to police, and that's okay. In addition, police make referrals. The community calls and makes referrals. So there's a variety of different ways. Mm-hmm. So if the call comes in over the phone or the computer, we dispatch to the scene, we go, and that's where the in-person response begins. We handle things like neighbor disputes, roommate troubles, barking dogs, parking complaints, disorderly subjects, loitering, begging, welfare checks. Check it. Hey, I haven't heard from my neighbor in 4 days and the mail's piling up. Can you go check on him? Anything that involves a peace officer. So here, if you separated from an ex-partner and you need to gather your clothes or items, but you're not super feeling safe to do that, you would call for a peace officer and they would stand by while you exchange things. That's something that our unit does. In addition, child custody exchanges. Caregivers don't always get along, surprise, surprise. So sometimes they need an outside party to assist with exchanging the child for visitation or the weekend or what have you. So we could stand by, which is always good, because the less that children see police in a negative manner when their caregivers are fighting, if that's only when they see police, they're not going to have a good vibe for that. But if they see them in other capacities, that may assist. Anything to do with juveniles that aren't higher level felonies, different things, parenting challenges, school challenges, really just anything where there's conflict and not weapons. That's what we're out there doing.
So when someone from the MRU turns up, I mean, imagine at first people are a bit like, who are you people? I called a police officer and you don't look like a police officer. You're not dressed in a police uniform. Who are you and what are you doing here? How did you build that awareness and then the trust that must be needed to be able to sometimes have those people allow you to support them in the various ways that you can?
Absolutely. Voice and choice is very, very important in this work. So it's a mixture. Sometimes you'll get folks that are like, who are you? I did ask for police. And then we explain, hey, we give a little 10-second elevator speech. We're able to assist you. And then they're, okay, whatever. Every once in a while, you might get someone opposite. I want a police officer. And then we'll explain, it may be some time. This is something. So it just depends on the situation. But the majority of the time, people don't care. They want help. Help me. I'm in crisis. Fix it. Figure it out. when really they have all the answers. They just don't know that yet. So sometimes we'll get, someone that's really not, and that's okay. That's okay. Whatever makes them feel safe and whatever will help them. But we kind of set expectations. But most of, and this is very, come here, help. This kid is off the hook, or this neighbor's been doing this. They call about neighbor trash cans or the dog defecating in someone's yard. And then you get there and there's 7 years of history. And you're like, oh, this was not about the trash can. This is about, all of the things that have been happening, property lines, tree trim. Like, you would just be absolutely
Parking.
dumbfounded at what people call the police. Oh, parking can turn into a whole parking war. Like, people are serious about their conflicts, and it's important to them, whatever it is or whatever they have going on, whatever life experiences, whatever healthy or unhealthy coping skills. You see all of that. And then when we bring in the piece, so when we are responding, it's not like we go and let's mediate. No.
Sign this agreement. Sit here.
Right. No. Initially, we're doing crisis intervention. So you got to get them in transformative mediation. You got to get them from red to blue, right? In social work, you have to get them from survival brain to thinking brain. And if you don't, you're not going to be able to continue on, because you can't have a logic conversation with somebody that's in survival mode. You have to get them to a place where they can think. You have to get them from that in transformative mediation, that red, that weakness, that I'm mad, I this, I feel, I hate, I don't, I want kind of thing, and hear them out, because voice is one of the most important, and most of the time hearing them out diffuses the situation as it is. And then once you hear them and they're moving from that, I have no power, to, oh, well, that makes sense. And the light bulb comes on and they're moving over here to where they're getting a little bit stronger. They're recognizing and they're responding in a different manner. So they're feeling a little bit more empowered. So sometimes that doesn't happen the first time. Sometimes we have to get them from out of that crisis piece. And then okay, so maybe it was a juvenile and a caregiver, and they've been at it and they're disrespectful. They don't want to do this. They're unruly. So you get there and you speak to this party, then you speak to this party, and then you chat, and maybe they're not at a spot. I don't want to talk to that person. Okay. You care if we come back in 24 hours or 2 days or a week and check in with you, see how things are going? Maybe we can have that conversation. Yeah. So sometimes it may be a day, 3 days, a week later. And sometimes you have those cases where they're just not going to get to there. And then there are the times where they work through whatever that little crisis was going on, and we're able to hold those conversations / mediations on scene. And when those things happen, it's amazing to watch the shift in people.
Yeah, great. Cherise, maybe I know that you're one of the people involved in the Institute for Conflict Transformation, so you're a transformative guru in a way, and I also know that conflict coaching is a really big topic of interest for you. I know you teach it at George Mason University. Can you talk a little bit about the how you use the transformative skills in that context, and particularly outside of the conversation or the mediation context, how you use that in the other types of support that you provide for people in that environment?
Absolutely. And I think the MRU response, the way Raven is describing that kind of crisis intervention or that crisis de-escalation, really is kind of at the heart of transformative conflict theory. And so when we think about what's happening to people when they experience conflict, I mean, that's the starting place. And so if you understand that people go into survival mode, and we may talk about that in all kinds of different ways, it's different language, the amygdala, if we talk about the brain portion of the amygdala being survival, and transformative, we talk about it as weakness and self-absorption. There's that experience that's happening happening to me where you and I aren't seeing eye to eye, and what that does to me internally. And so that's really the starting place. And I think that's the foundation that I think is really important when we're talking about conflict related experiences. And so I think it's really important, if you have that foundation, to understand what the human experience of what was it doing to me. Become this person that has to be protective of myself, and I get defensive and I get scared. And so it's that foundation that I think is really important. And I think it's that foundation that has allowed us to actually innovate in this way. And so, like Raven said, we're not trying to, people are calling 911 and we're like trying to get them to the table to mediate. No, with anything that we do, so people call our community mediation center. We've established ourselves as the place if you've got a conflict, you can call us, right? And so when we're talking to people on the phone or out in the field with our mediation response unit, people are in crisis. And so it's that understanding of what people are experiencing that really is the starting place. And then because I do conflict coaching, and it's that one-on-one work with people, it's that understanding, tell me about what's going on for you, and beginning to figure out what conflict means for them, where they're at, what's going on. And like Raven said, it's that voice, creating that space outside in front of your house or on the telephone, but creating that space where people can just talk about what's going on, and learning to, as I like to say, learning to listen in a different way. So I'm listening for, what's hard for them. I'm listening for what we would call in transformative, indicators of weakness and self absorption, where they feel, frustrated or angry, listening for that self absorption where they feel really suspicious or hopeless, really, that anything can be different, and wanting, as you like to say, Sam, their dream to justice. I just need Raven, I need you to come in here and take those people away to jail. And being able to be there with them and work with that, and continue to ask some questions here and there, but giving them that space. And so it really, that kind of understanding. And I think as a community mediation center, we transition to practicing from a transformative perspective on conflict, because it was more aligned with kind of this idea of empowerment, really, and creating a space for people to say what they need and talk about what they want, and that they had the wisdom within them, that they know what's best for them. I don't, as an outsider coming in. And so it's really that kind of base, I think, that allows us to do some of the many things that we do: mediation, conflict coaching. We do team building from a transformer perspective. We do training, and all of that, really at the heart of it, has that kind of understanding of what crisis does to us. And I think that's the connection. And while the mediation response is new, innovation for us, we're still working with people in crisis and who are experiencing harm and trauma and injustice in their eyes. And we have to go there first. And so that's it's exciting for me to be able to kind of take transformative theory, conflict, community mediation theory, and then add in all of the amazing things, the kind of that social work perspective of empowerment, right? Helping people, tap into their strengths and figure out what they need, helping people deal with their crisis, their immediate crisis, in a way that's real helpful to them.
And I hear that theme very strongly, that the first step, and it's not just one step, it's a process, but the first thing that you're focusing on, no matter what you've been called for, is that giving people a sense of empowerment by giving them voice and choice, letting them talk about what's going on for them in an environment where they're comfortable, in a way that they're comfortable talking about it, and really listening differently and really intently to, what's hard for them, what their challenges are, giving and then highlighting for them that they have choices, they have capacity to make the choices that are right for them, and you're not going to tell them what they have to do or what they should do. And so
Yeah.
sorry.
And I think you hit it. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I think you hit it right on the nail. It's that. But I think there's even something before that too.
Okay.
I called for help and someone was right there.
Yeah.
And we can get to you if we're not on another call, because we'll pull up, the Google Maps. I don't know if you have that in
Yeah.
Australia, but we've
Yeah.
got Google Maps, and we can put in the address, and if we call them beforehand, and many times we do, to see if they even want us to come out, we literally can say, we'll be there in 7 minutes. Now think about that.
Yeah.
You're in distress. You've called the police for help. You probably don't want to call the police, but like Raven said, we don't know who to call sometimes. And you get an immediate or a response in under 20 minutes, really. And so that's really powerful if you're in a crisis stage. So I think that comes before. I think that's what we're offering. And, we'll be evaluating the impact of this work soon enough. And I hope that we measure that, when people are hurting in the community, our ability as a community, right, to respond um, quickly, but compassionately and empathetically and appropriately. And so, Sam, alternative dispute resolution is one form of this work that appropriate response to disputes. And I think with the MRU, that what we're offering is a really a more appropriate response to what people are asking for and need.
And what I hear is that it's a tailored response for every individual. It's not just your standard, here's what you get, these are the steps we go through. You're there right when they need them, where they need you, in the way that works for them. Yeah, so powerful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It is very powerful. It's beautiful to be able to be in a moment with someone like that and then to see them transform, literally, whether it's their thought or physically or what have you, to see that happen is the most rewarding experience.
And are you finding over time that people are starting to learn to call you directly rather than coming through the police referrals?
Yes, as we continue to grow, anytime you begin a community-wide program at this level, it's going to take about 36 to 48 months to really saturate the community with the information, because we're changing systems that have been in place for decades. So as we go along and people know who to call and when to call, yes, we've seen the number of calls via our line increase dramatically.
Great. How are you keeping up with demand? I imagine once people start to know what you can do for them, the calls are going to increase in number.
Yes, we continue to hire and add additional teams. We're going to be adding an additional unit here in the next year. So we just continue to grow and expand based on the needs of the community, and that's what we want to do.
Great. What do you think are the main lessons that you've learned so far?
That's a big question. I think, for me, I think if you on a kind of practical delivery perspective of a service, you have to know your purpose and your why. Why are we doing that? And being really grounded in that purpose. And so we have been solidly grounded for more than 23 years as a community mediation center, both in the practice of community mediation and those hallmarks of community mediation, which really are all about empowerment of people in their voice and helping them deal with conflict. And then you add in transformative conflict theory that says the same, and that people are, once you help people work through what's hard in the situation, that they know what's best for them, and to honor that voice. And so not only does talk matter, um, but really trusting people. And so I think what I'm learning is when you have such a clear purpose, um, and and a purpose and a why, really is grounding. And what it also does is it allows you freedom to bend, kind of like that proverbial deep-rooted oak tree that's been there for 100 years, that's got solid roots and that can bend and flow. And so purpose, as we like to say, purpose drives practice. And I'm really seeing that be really important to us as we add in not only something new, but new voices. Raven comes in as this breath of fresh air, and our ability to welcome that and see that and grow and learn from that, I think, is really important. So I would say that, for any practitioner out there, should be really rooted in purpose and practice, and have a framework, have a way to kind of really be reflective about what you're doing. And so that would be for me, on a kind of broad philosophical lessons learned. We've got growing pains, and we're experiencing our own weakness and self-absorption at times as we do this work, but we have the tools and the capacity to be able to kind of get into thriving brain, and be able to kind of navigate forward. And so I'm really excited about that. And I would say that that's the biggest lesson that I see from my perspective.
And I think
Awesome.
what you said about having a very clear sense of purpose and that driving your practice and that giving you flexibility, that must be absolutely essential in the MRU type role, where you never really know what you're going to get. You've got such a diverse group of people with diverse needs, diverse conflicts, diverse challenges that they're facing in that particular moment. If you only have one process, it's not going to fit. Whereas if you've got a strong sense of purpose, as you said, you can use that purpose in any situation that you've faced, with any people that you've faced, and support them to figure out what's right for them. And the second thing you said that I thought was really lovely, I was focusing very much on how's the community trusting you, but you made a really important point. You have to trust the community. You have to trust the people that you're there to support. So I think that's a lovely balance that has to be mutual, not just one way.
Absolutely.
Raven,
Absolutely.
what?
We've had so many times where I think people act upon people.
Uh-huh.
They come in, experts come into a community, and they have all their lovely ideas, but they've never stopped to ask the community what they want and whether it's
Yeah.
helpful. And we've always been really sensitive to that, that we start with what people say they need and want. And it seems kind of radical idea, but that really is community mediation. We aren't the experts. We're here to work with and partner, with the community. So I'm glad you picked up on that, because it's so subtle.
Yeah, yeah, subtle but fundamentally important. Yeah. Raven, what have been the lessons for you so far?
I think knowing that you can make change is really important. I mean, generally, no, but seeing it work in the collaboration between all of the parties, with the community, with law enforcement, with us, with our partners, and different things like that, to see the collaboration come together for the good of the community has been absolutely amazing. And to be with someone in their moment is a humbling yet rewarding experience. Um, I was having a moment for a second thinking about some of the people that we have stood beside in some of their worst moments of life, or stood by people and listened to them when they haven't been heard before. Those are the things that are saying we're doing it. We may not be able to help each person get through whatever it is, but those that we do, and it's very rewarding. And those that we don't, we were able to assist them with something.
Yeah.
And being there, being present in that moment is one of the most humbling yet rewarding experiences. So that has been a lesson to see that change is possible, if you really stick to it and you work hard and you really collaborate. And that's the key piece, is the collaboration. That systemic change can happen, and the fight might be a little long, and you might get a little weary, but in the end, the purpose of what you're doing is greater than all the work that you have put into it. So I think those are two of the biggest things that I walk away with, not just like but almost daily. You think about that. I always look for like one good thing. Okay, we had a really rough call. Let's go to here. Look, they're smiling, they're high-fiving, they're excited, blah blah blah. That's what we walk away from. It's not always the tangible or the thank you, but knowing that you were present and in that moment is so rewarding.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes that's enough, right? Sometimes that's all people need to take that next step. Yeah. And you mentioned the word collaboration, and I'm assuming, one of the strengths of the program is the very strong collaboration that you have with police and other professionals who are supporting the community. I imagine it will be maybe almost impossible for a community mediation centre just to start offering this service without the support and the collaboration of associated groups in the community. Do you think that's been a really important part of your success?
And I think Raven and I can come at it from two different perspectives. And I would say, because we've been part of the community and entity since 1987, we built relationships. So I think the other kind of cornerstone to our work is relationship building. You can't act upon people without their consent. You shouldn't anyway, unless there's reasons to do so. And so I would say that the partnerships that we've developed since 1987 with the police, with the courts, with the neighborhood associations that we have, which are these organizations within smaller communities that work for the needs of that micro community. And so those are some of our longest standing relationships that we have. And of course, we're part of local government, so we're literally part of City of Dayton government and built relationships within all those departments, and we all serve the community. And of course, our social service agencies out there. So I would say that you're correct. We can't do this in isolation. We've had to be in partnership, and we've worked really hard. I think, to some respects, there's still a devaluing of conflict resolution and conflict engagement, the way that we do it in terms of mediation or facilitation and dialogue. And so, we've really had to establish our value and demonstrate our effectiveness, and we've been able to do that. And I think we arrive at this place on that foundation of great effectiveness in what we do. And so we couldn't do that without our partners. And then, to Raven can speak to more on from her view, but I think that's just been really important reason why we are successful with what we're doing, is those long-standing community partnerships. We can't do this without literally community members and our community partners.
Absolutely. Well put, Ms. Cherise.
And here's a very pragmatic question, and I think I know the answer, but this is not a cheap program to run, particularly with paid staff, not volunteers. So the funding comes from the government funding for the program. Is that how it works?
So we have a couple of different funding sources. Primarily, the funding comes from our city and our general fund through city taxes or taxes. And then we also have some grants that we utilize from different partners, in particular the American Association for Arbitration. We receive a very good grant from them, and the Ohio Criminal Justice System, OCGS. We receive a grant from them. So we do have other funding sources, but primarily we're funded by the city.
Great. Oh, that's great. And it's great to have that pragmatic support as well as the moral support from your collaborators.
There's a lot to it, from from our uniforms that we have to
The
vehicles
cars,
to
yeah.
radios and computers. I mean, it's a quite an endeavor, and I think it's a good use of community dollars, tax dollars, because the people have said this is what we want, and it's a judicious and very responsible way to use tax dollars. So it's exciting that there's that support all around for the program. Put your money where put your money where you say is important. So.
Yeah. And I think the fact that you're getting such good feedback is hopefully a sign that people will continue to invest in the future, because it is having positive impacts on the community. And not just the people who live in the community, but people who work in the community, like the police, are getting some benefit. I'm sure they're grateful that they don't have to attend some of those calls that perhaps were an irritation to them, away from the real police work. Or the more significant things. I wonder, just to give a little bit of colour, a little bit of storytelling to the conversation, whether you could talk about a couple of situations that stood out for you, a couple of calls that you attended that I don't know, sums up why you're passionate about this.
Sure, we have lots of different stories. One of the things that we usually let folks know about our story is someone had made a call to the police about someone loitering on a bench, and they were concerned about him. And that would be a lower priority call that police probably wouldn't respond to for a couple of hours. And our team was able to be out there within 15, 20 minutes of the call and engaged with the person. They weren't feeling good. They were crying. They wanted a medic. So we called a medic, and then talking with them a little bit further, they had disclosed they had been sexually assaulted and didn't know what to do and things like that. So we were able to connect them and get them to the hospital, get their sexual assault nurse examiner kit done, and go through that process. We've helped juveniles who have maybe left group homes that they have been in, and they're not from this area, and they're lost and they're not sure what to do. We helped a young boy find his way back to the group home, and that was highly important to him. He felt very unsafe where he was. We have worked with lots and lots and lots of parents and caregivers, in which usually there's a communication breakdown or some type of communication barrier, and we've worked with them and followed up and kind of provided some of those resources. So they're moving from, take this kid away, I can't stand them anymore, to, hey, we're really getting along. They're doing their chores. I let them go to the pool last week, things like that. We had a neighbor dispute that had the whole neighborhood up in arms about basketball. The kids were playing basketball in the street, and neighbors were upset. Balls were going in people's flower beds, trampling over things. There was this whole crisis really going on in the neighborhood. And we noticed that there was a basketball hoop in the back. We'd ask questions. They're like, well, we don't have a hoop. We can't play back there. So we really just drove down the street and bought a inexpensive basketball net and hung it up for them. And there haven't been any calls for service from that neighbor since. We've had things like, actually yesterday, just followed up, we took a mental health call the prior week, and the lady was struggling with a few things. And she was getting connected as we were there. She was getting connected with services on the phone. So we said, hey, can we check in with you next week, make sure that you got connected to services and anything you needed, kind of did our little assessment. Oh yeah, that would be great. Well, when we went to check on her, her family had informed us that she's in a treatment facility. So she's getting the help that she needs. So the connections that were being made did pull through. So we'll be interested to check in with her when she gets back from her treatment. So there are lots and lots of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of stories to tell you about moments when we've been on scene and the person's like, thank you for listening to me. No one has listened to me before. All I did this, and this. So to hear those types of things, that's what keeps us going each day. When you see people or neighbors that haven't been getting along for who knows how long, and now they're at least able to wave at each other when they're going to the mailbox, or different things like that. Those are the moments and those are the times when we were able to keep going. We've been proposed to, we've been cussed out, we've been all kinds of different interactions with people.
Remove some chickens, I think, right?
Oh yeah, the rooster call. Oh
Rooster.
yeah. Only thing I haven't seen yet is an elephant in the backyard, but I'm waiting. It's coming. It's coming at some point.
There are goats in the city, so
And
I'm
pigs
sure
and
we haven't come
sheep.
across a goat yet.
Oh yeah. Great.
What do you think? What do you think all of the listeners and the viewers could learn from this? If you were, I don't know. As I said, is there a standard mediator? But if you were a mediator who did kind of the I don't know, traditional practice where, you do your intake, parties sign an agreement, they sit in a room that's got, air conditioning and they take them through the standard steps. I mean, what can those people learn from what you guys are doing?
That what the work that you are doing does work, whether it's in the moment, it's a day later, a week later, a month later, or what we do does work, and the benefits far exceed all of the work that we put into it. We're putting in the elbow grease and we're making it happen, but the results are much greater than all of the work. What we say, temporary sacrifices for long-term benefits, all of that intersects and is there, and that is what should inspire. And if you've been in practice and you've been in one form of practice for a period of time, look around, figure out if it's not already there, it's not create it, or get someone else to create it. If you're not the creative one, create. There's lots and lots of different options, and to see things come from one piece and expand, it's all about growth and opportunity and reaching as many as we can.
So I wanted to add into that and balance this out, because I agree very much with what Raven is saying, and the piece that Raven and I know that we bring. So to answer your question, is it's the underrated value of two things: our presence, how we show up. Do we show up non-directively? Do we show up as, the expert, the person that's going to bring order, or do we do that? Do we show up in a non-directive uh, presence or energy that's really respective of the people? So I think it's really important for folks who are looking to do something new and innovative, is to make sure that you really work on the presence that you bring, because that does really matter. How we meet people, how we think about people, how we value and trust that people have what it takes really matters. And listen, I think it's also very underrated in our field, the power of listening, and to do that well, and to be listening for what matters to them, what's hard, what they're struggling with, and be patient with that process. Those are the two things I think that make this work and make it so effective, because we show up in a certain kind of way that is really respectful of people. So that's my advice. for any mediator that mediates, in the traditional kind of way, is don't underestimate the power of our presence and our ability to relationship build. And we do that through how we listen and are with people.
And I think the other thing that I really get from what you've said tonight and what I've learned about the program from looking at the website and other interviews that you've done and presentations is that we can think outside the box, that we don't have to support people the same way, that we can use the skills that we have in listening to people, in supporting people to become clearer about what's important to them and identifying choices. We can do it in really creative ways that literally and physically meets people where they are. We can do it perhaps earlier. You guys can do it in 7 minutes sometimes, that there's opportunities to get there sooner, to tailor not just the process that we're using, but who we are, where we are. And I think, as you said, Cherise, as long as you've got a really clear sense of purpose, then you've got a lot of flexibility. And I think this is such a great example of that, of how you can help so many more people in so many ways that you wouldn't think of when you think of a mediation service, the sorts of things that people can do. It's really inspiring. I really enjoyed learning about it, and I hope that many more people learn from it and emulate what you're doing, because it's really powerful.
Thank you. Thank
Thank
you for
you.
having us. We hope that someone somewhere hears us and is like, oh, I think I'm going to try this.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to do this.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for your time, for being so flexible, for being so inspiring. Is there anything else that you think would be useful or that you'd like to say before we finish up?
I think you summed that up so beautifully, Sam. I feel whole and complete with that, and certainly, we're, as one of our missions in Community Mediation Center is helping others create a service that's sustainable and that's rooted in the values of community mediation and helping people. And so we certainly do value talking with people and supporting their ideas, because I do think it is creative and it is innovative, and there's a lot of risk that's involved, because we want to get it right for the people, for the good of the community, and each person that lives, goes to school, works, has a stake in the community. We really want to get it right. And so we certainly have our learning lessons that we would love to share, and I think we're always open to talking with people. And I know Raven and I really just think it's so exciting to know that people in Australia may get to learn about us. It's really exciting, because we don't want to be the best kept secret here in
No,
our
you
little
should not
corner of the
be.
world.
Everyone should know about you and what you're doing.
And we really want to help people learn from us and be inspired from us. And like Raven said, systemic change is possible. It just doesn't happen quickly, and it can only happen in community and relationship and collaboration. And so we I know, I speak for myself, I really appreciate being able to talk to the folks in your wonderful country to help learn about what we're doing here in our little neck of the woods, as we like to say.
Yeah. No, it's great. You're great role models. Thank you so much.